We're at halftime in Death Valley. I just had to catch up with everyone on this one. 28-13 at half. Boston College doing a number on Clemson. My goodness. If anybody could give me some feedback on this one. My primary game has been Michigan State. I have had Clemson and Syracuse on the back burner on the second screen. And, of course, Georgia and Kentucky. But, of course, the story of the hour is number one is going down by 15 with the 50-yard field goal by B.T. Potter at the end of the first half, 28-13. I've seen some of the action. DJ Uiagalelei with 8 completions in his first 8 attempts. I saw that he was sacked on a particular play in which he should have gotten rid of the football. Roberts for Boston College came rushing in, and inexperienced by DJ forced that. But I want to hear back from everybody else. So I'm just here to say what is going on in Death Valley, and it looks like I'm going to have to watch the second half. I did see the 99-yard return when Travis Etienne inexplicably grabbed for the football as he was going in for a would-be touchdown. I also want to credit Boston College. That seems like a luck play, scoop and score, just kind of given to them. It wasn't a forced fumble, and it was a bit of a lucky play, but they obviously had to outrun the offense, 97 yards for the touchdown. That was Brandon Sebastian. But also keep in mind that on first and second down, Clemson was within 1 to 2 yards of the goal line, and BC held up on the first 2 plays, and we don't know what would have happened had there been a straight communication and mesh point between Uiagalelei and Etienne. We are going to have fun saying Uiagalelei, that's for sure. George is in the chat. We're just collecting our thoughts here at halftime because we've got a big upset going here. So, first of all, huge first half by BC. Notre Dame fans, have you been watching the play of Phil Jurkovec? The first drive of the game, he came down 3 for 3, boom, boom, boom. The last touchdown, the touchdown that capped off the first drive for Boston College to make it 7-0. That was a work of art in terms of a quarterback standing in against a rush and threading a needle to the outside and placing the ball exactly where it needed to be placed against tight man-to-man coverage. That was impressive, and Phil Jurkovec is impressive just across the board. All right, we've got folks in here. Roland, can't believe it. Of course, the game's not over. It's a 2-score game. That field goal at the end of the first half was big because it got Clemson within 2 scores. So again, we'll calm down in regards to, we're not proclaiming an upset here for Boston College over Clemson, but BC typically does play Clemson tight. There have been some blowouts through the years, but typically BC, they're not intimidated by Clemson. They haven't been, at least under Steve Adazio. Of course, this is Jeff Hafley, who's doing a nice job with BC. This is a different BC team also in regards to just offensive approach. They've got their best quarterback. I will say it, the best quarterback since Matt Ryan. They've only played 6 games, but it's obvious to see that Phil Jurkovec is the best BC quarterback that they've had in a long, long time, and I cannot think of a better one since Matt Ryan. Also got Mike on the line, Mike Cutlip. I know it's been talked about Clemson and Notre Dame getting to the playoffs if they split regular season and ACC championship, but what if Clemson losing to BC and Notre Dame? Well, again, Mike, as we discuss playoff scenarios here on a regular basis with you, you cannot set up a scenario in a vacuum. Like, we cannot just say, okay, this is what's going on in this conference. How does that affect the college football playoffs? It depends what's going on elsewhere. Roland, I'm pissed. I'm a Miami fan. I need Clemson to win. Need Clemson to win. Not completely understanding that comment. Miami just needs to win. Miami needs to win. What you need is Clemson to beat Notre Dame. What you don't need is for Clemson to come back and win this game, win the rest of its games, except against Notre Dame, and have Notre Dame beat Clemson and have Clemson and Notre Dame make it to the ACC championship game. That is the only way Miami does not control its own destiny, is to have Notre Dame win out. And Clemson, of course. Because if they win out and have Notre Dame beat Clemson, if Notre Dame loses to Clemson, then we've got a tie between Notre Dame and Miami for the second spot. And they don't play each other. So I think this is fascinating just because much attention is going to be given. Let's say this score holds. Clemson loses. What to do with Clemson, a Clemson team without Trevor Lawrence? Because I try to approach it in a balanced way. Because if Trevor Lawrence comes back to the next game and let's say Clemson just marches on and becomes the team that we expect them to be, and they continue to win, but they've got this one loss, then how do we evaluate the loss? Well, we evaluate it. I think we blend or split our perspectives, because we understand on one hand that Clemson and just about every team in the country is a different team with their starting quarterback in versus out. But you know what? Injuries happen in football, and each team needs to be held accountable for the final score, regardless of who's in. If Clemson was missing 15 players and they lost this game, we can't just say, well, we give them a pass and they're not going to be dropped from number one, because they would have won this game. You don't do that. Injuries are part of the game. There's a team that won a national championship with a third-string quarterback. Mike, I expect Clemson to eventually get it together and win this game, but it would be huge if they lose. How far do they drop in the rankings? Again, that depends on what else happens. I cannot answer these questions that are in a vacuum. It depends what else happens. So, Clemson's number 2 in my rankings. Those would be the logical rankings that make sense. So I believe they're number 1 in the other rankings. I'm almost positive. I don't look at them. I stopped looking at them because they don't make sense. Luke, the title of your video says Syracuse shocking Clemson. I think you meant Boston College. I did put Syracuse. I think it's a that's funny that I put that. I just Syracuse has done it so many times. You know, they completed the mission once, but they really had the second one where they had Chase Bryce, of course, in 2018 complete the pass. Yeah, that's funny, Luke. Thank you for noting that. I will correct that. God, I hate Brian Kelly. He said Phil Jurkovic couldn't read a playbook. Thanks, Kelly. I hope Brian Kelly did not say that publicly. That's horrible if he said that. Anyway, he shouldn't be making statements about players like that publicly. Jim Lee says Clemson loses today. Season over. Season over. Technical technician. Mark, please rub it in. Rub it in. Rub it in. What am I going to rub in? It's halftime, technical technician. It's halftime. I'm here. I didn't plan to do this at halftime because I like to gather my thoughts, and I try to, obviously, all the half times don't line up, so I just want to go from game to game and take as many notes as possible. But what did DJ do here in the first half? Uiagalelei went 19, man, they threw 26 passes, 19 of 26 for 222. They threw 26 passes in the first half, threw a touchdown. He didn't play poorly from what I saw. They had the mess up at the goal line with Travis Etienne, and obviously that flips the score because they were down 14-7 going in for a 14-14 game. And they give up the scoop and score for 97 yards to Brandon Sebastian, and it's suddenly 21-7. And let's understand that, let's not discredit that touchdown again as luck, as I said off the top, because BC stopped them on 1st and goal, 2nd and goal. They made 2 stops, and who knows what would have happened on that play had it been executed. Cuban Kane, where's all this Clemson top-tier talent? You mean the top-tier talent that showed up against you? Well, top-tier talent doesn't show up every week. And obviously the quarterback situation is affecting Clemson. But typically, let's understand that if a number 1 team in the country that has one of the 2 or 3 best quarterbacks in the country loses that quarterback and goes to the second string, and we see that they're losing to an unranked team by 15 points at half, what are we expecting to see in the box score from the quarterback? 10 for 22 with 3 interceptions in the first half, that kind of performance. But yes, is there a drop-off at quarterback? Yes, but the quarterback's not playing poorly. And again, I'm going to have to go back and watch the first half. I saw probably 10 or 12 plays. I'm watching Michigan State, but I'm going to this is going to be my main game, I guess, in the second half until something changes and Clemson scores 4 touchdowns in a row or something. Interesting stuff. Michigan State getting pass interference calls and holding penalties on the Michigan secondary all over the place. And they're typically good calls, but it is being called close to the vest in Ann Arbor, and Michigan State leads Michigan 14-10. Travis Etienne, 11 carries, 29 yards. So it's funny because the conventional thought, I'm not going to call it wisdom because should have known that this kid can play, Uiagalelei, that Clemson wasn't going to go into a shell and not throw the ball just because they lost their starting quarterback. They have talent, and they have a quarterback room that's loaded, and this kid's the number 1 quarterback in high school. Maybe slightly more conservative, protecting him and protecting him from a physical standpoint, also protecting him from a play calling standpoint, not giving him too much. But they weren't going to go into a shell. Like I heard this all over the place that Travis Etienne is going to have a huge day because they're just going to give him the ball constantly. Like suddenly he's going to go from a back that carries the ball 12 to 15 times a game to a guy that's Lorenzo White from Michigan State, 1985, 40 carries a game, 11 carries, 29 yards. So he's getting the ball slightly more. Dependent fanatic, Michigan better adjust. Right now, it looks like Michigan State wants it more. 4 ranked teams losing to unranked right now. There are 4 to 5 upsets in the top 25 every week. I say this every week. Now, if I knew exactly where they were going to occur, I would be a rich man. So I don't know, but I state this every week because it happens almost every week. There are 4 to 5 upsets in the top 25. I picked Michigan State with the 22. I'm not going to say I picked the win, but right now they are up 4 unless that score is changed. Let's look at the scores real quick, and then I'll get to everybody else's comments. And I will be watching Clemson and Boston College, I guess, in the second half. That is switched to my number 1 screen. Although I get all the ABC and ESPNs online and not Fox, so I kind of have to keep the Fox game and the FS1 games on the main screen. All right. Of course, BC leads Clemson 28-13 at half. Georgia on top of Kentucky. They're into the third quarter, 14-3. Cincinnati leads Memphis. Big game there, 21-10. Again, at halftime, Michigan State over Michigan, 14-10. Big game in the Big 12 here. West Virginia leads Kansas State. Kansas State, people discarding Kansas State, thinking all Oklahoma State, but there's a tie atop the Big 12 at 4-0. That includes Kansas State. West Virginia leads 24-10 at half. Coastal Carolina, number 20 in the nation. What do I have them? Somewhere in that range. 41-0 over Georgia State. Iowa State leads Kansas 20-7, just starting the third quarter. That's pretty much what we've got, at least in the top 25 at halftime. Got some other scores. But to some people's point in the live chat, no excuses for Clemson. No excuses. There are injuries all over the place. Teams are injured. People get injured. Now, we can say, I believe Clemson would have won this game with Trevor Lawrence. We could say that if that's your opinion. That may be my opinion. If this thing finishes out 41-38 Boston College, I will probably be on here saying, yeah, they would have won with Trevor Lawrence. But credit Boston College. Great teams overcome injuries. Great teams overcome injuries. Now, if you lose the entire offensive line or something like that, there are extremes. Any other scores at halftime of note? Not really. Tulane over Temple 16-3. Purdue leads Illinois 17-10. Wake Forest leads Syracuse 30-7. Look out, Miami fans. You got Wake Forest, I believe, in a few weeks. Guzman Chris, BC is a solid O-line. I'll be looking out for that. I've seen BC. I saw the fourth quarter of the North Carolina game. I saw the overtime against Pitt. It's pretty much what I've seen out of BC this year. Mickey B, Clemson's defense is failing them today. And that's, of course, a good point as well. 28 points, of course, 7 against the offense. So really giving up 21 points defensively in the first half is a ton. Let's look at Jurkovich's numbers. 8 for 12 for 161. So he's getting a ton of yardage out of those completions. 2 touchdowns, no picks. Boston College has more speed at receiver. And, of course, they've always got a tight end that can play almost always. And the latest is, of course, our guy Hunter Long. He only has 1 catch, though. C.J. Lewis, 4 for 54 for BC with a touchdown. Jalen Gill, the Ohio State player, transfer, 1 catch for 48 yards. Zay Flowers, their leading receiver, and deep threat, 2 for 45. So Jurkovic, sorry, David Knight will call me on that. Jurkovic will is getting the job done because the rushing has been pretty non-existent for both teams, especially for Clemson. Sack yardage included, 14 carries, 17 yards for Clemson. 1 yard per carry. Yes, wrong team in the title. When I'm thinking Clemson upset, of course you think Syracuse because it's Syracuse. 2016, 2017, 2020, 17, 18. My bad. Mike, I would contrast it to Ohio State losses to Purdue 1 year and Iowa and get held out. Yeah, well, that's possible. It depends what's going on elsewhere, though, Mike. So I totally get the point, but that's because Ohio State was being compared to other teams where there was a very close resume. But if Syracuse goes on and wins, or I got Syracuse on the brain now, if Clemson goes on and wins the games, loses without their starting quarterback, and wins the ACC with 1 loss, they're going to the playoff. It's just fascinating to watch this, and it's also just interesting that they will have no margin for error against Notre Dame. That's what makes this, in terms of a logistical situation, important. Brody, I hope we don't overlook Clemson next week heading into Boston College the week after. And they're just about to kick off. Mickey, we evaluate the loss of BC hangs 50 on Clemson's defense. Good point. That's a great point because it's not all about Trevor Lawrence. He doesn't play every position on both sides. Too much put on the quarterback. Joe, title should be Boston College. Shocking. Clemson, not Syracuse. Got it. Have you guys ever had a typo? Brooks Jones, Arkansas would beat Clemson today. Maybe they would. All right, Clemson gets off to a good start. Travis Etienne on the return out to the 40-some yard line. I will whip through these comments, see if there's anything there. My thoughts on Texas A&M and Arkansas tonight. I believe it's going to be a great game. Can't wait to see it. That's going to be on my second screen behind Ohio State and Penn State. And if the Buckeyes put it on Penn State, then I'll be focused on that. But I will watch every play of that game eventually. Can only watch one game at a time, really. Can have like 3 on at the same time, but can really only watch the one game. But we did a preview on Arkansas, Texas A&M. I'm expecting a really good game. And there you go. Get my predictions over on Patreon. All right. Mickey, if Clemson loses today, they win out, win the ACC. They're in the playoffs. Book it. Yes. All right. So just good to catch up with everyone. Again, I was locked on Michigan State. I saw about 10 or 12 plays of the first half, but I'm going to watch this primarily in the second half until maybe BC blows them out by 50. Just kidding. All right. Great to see everybody. We will see you after the noon window, 3 p.m. Eastern time right here, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Enjoy the football. We'll see you in a couple hours.